Good morning everyone, my name is Putri and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to talk about narrative text. Does anyone know what is narrative text is? We are going to learn this together now. Let's check this out. To talk about narrative text, start from the definition, and then the social function, and then the generic structure, and then the language feature, and lastly the types of narrative text and the examples. Let's check this out together. To talk about the definition of narrative text. Does anyone know what is the definition of narrative text? So, narrative text is a type of text which tell us a story or an event with the purpose of entertaining us and delivering a moral value or life lessons. In this definition, we can say that the social function of narrative text, the first is to entertain us. It means that by reading a narrative text we can become entertained. And then the second one is to give us a moral value or life lesson. It means that narrative text contains a moral value and life lesson which is benefits us. And then the third is to introduce cultural heritage. It means that a narrative text consists of many cultural aspects which we can learn. And then the fourth is to develop our imagination and creativity. It means that by reading a narrative text we can become more creative and has a more imagination. And then now we are going to talk about the generic structure of narrative text. The first generic structure of narrative text is the orientation, and then the second is the complication, the third is the resolution, and the fourth, which is optional, is the orientation. The orientation normally introduces us to the characters, to the settings, to the place, to the details of the setup story, and then move into the complication, which is the part where the characters start to having a problems and facing a conflicts, and then it will decline to the resolution, which the characters start to solve his problem and eventually face a happy ending or sad ending or even an open ending. And then the reorientation normally consists of moral values, life lesson, conclusion of the story, or even the opinion of the writers. We're going to talk about the language feature of narrative text. There are 5 language features in narrative text. The first is the use of past tense or verb to. It means that the narrative text happened in the past. For example, fought, run, jump, and any others verb to. And then the second language feature of narrative text is the use of action verbs. It means that the characters directly involved in this story and not from the third viewpoint. And then the third language feature of narrative text is the use of direct speech. It means that the narrative text consists of dialogue between characters, which indicate that the characters directly involved to each others. And then the fourth language feature of narrative text is the use of time conjunction. For example, once upon a time, a long time ago, finally, after that, and many others time conjunction. And then the fifth language feature of narrative text is the use of adjective and adverbs. It used to describe the characters and the settings. For example, beautiful, handsome, sad, fast, and many others adjectives and adverbs. And now we are going to talk about the types of narrative text. There are five types of narrative text. The first is folktale, which is a story that passed down from generation to generation, such as Malin Kundang, Timun Mas, Keong Mas, and many other stories. And then the second is a legend. Legend is similar to folktale and myth, but it is different. The legend is a stories about an origin of some things, such as the legend of Toba Lake, the legend of Tangkuban Perahu, and many others legend. And the third is a fable. A fable is a story featuring animals with a human-like traits. It means that the character is an animal. However, they have human-like traits. For example, a fable is the lion and the deer, the ant and the elephant, the crocodile and the deer, and many others fable. And then the fourth types of narrative text is myth. Myth is stories about mythology connected to religion or gods and many others divine beings, such as, for example, of myth stories is about Greek mythology. And then the last types of narrative text is the fairy tale. Fairy tale is a fiction stories, a fantasy stories, which is a stories that is not real. For example, Cinderella, Snow White, The Beauty and the Beast, and any others a fairy tale. And that is our lesson today. Hopefully this video can become a benefit to you. Thank you for watching, and if you have any question, raise your hand and ask your teacher, or you can comment in below. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. See you next time.